Akemi's heart, her whole body, was afire with rage and jealousy. It showed in the depths of her eyes, even in the color of her skin. But she continued her interrogation. Tell me, how old is she? About the same. You mean the same age as me? But she looks younger and prettier. Akemi plunged on, hoping to turn Shotaro against Otsu. Musashi's more masculine than most men. He must hate having to watch a woman carry on all the time. Otsu probably thinks tears will win a man's sympathy. She's like the girls walking for the Sumiya. Jotaro, very much arch, retorted, That's not true at all. In the first place, Musashi likes Otsu. He never shows his feelings, but he's in love with her. Akemi, Akemi flush, Akemi's flushed face grew bright crimson. She longed to throw herself into a river to quench the flames that were consuming her. Jotaro, let's go this way. She pulled him toward a red light in a side street. That's a drinking place. Well, what of it? Women have no business in a place like that. You can't go in there. All of a sudden, I have the urge to drink and I can't go in alone. I'll be embarrassed. You be embarrassed. What about me? They will have things to eat. You can have anything you want. At first glance, the shop seemed empty. Akemi walked right in, then facing the wall rather than the counter, said, Bring me some sake. One cup after another went down as fast as was humanly possible. Jotaro, frightened by the quantity, trying to slow her down, but she elbowed him out of the way. Quiet, she yelped. What a nuisance you are. Bring some more sake. Sake. Jotaro, insinuating himself between her and the sake jar, pleaded. You've got to stop. You can't go on drinking here like this. Don't worry about me, she slurred. You are a friend of Otsu, aren't you? I can't stand women who try to win a man with tears. Well, I dislike women who get drunk. I'm so sorry, but how could a rent like you understand why I drink? Come on, just pay the bill. You think I've got money? Don't you? No, maybe he can collect from the Sumir. I've already sold myself to the master anyway. Tears flooded her eyes. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Weren't you the one who was making fun of Otsu for crying? Look at yourself. My tears aren't the same as hers. Oh, life's too much trouble. I might as well be dead. With that, she stood up and lurched out into the street. The shopkeeper, having had other female customers like this in his time, merely laughed it off, but a ronin who had until then been sleeping quietly in a corner opened his bleary eyes and stared at her retreating back. Shotaro darted after her and grabbed her around the waist, but he lost his hold. She started running down the darkened street, Shotaro close behind. Stop! He cried with alarm. You mustn't even think of it. Come back! Though she seemed not to care whether she ran into something in the dark or fell into a swamp, she was fully conscious of Jotaro's pleading. When she had plunged into the sea at Sumiyoshi, she had wanted to kill herself, but she was no longer so lacking in guilt. She got a sudden thrill from having Jotaro so worried about her. Watch out, he screamed, seeing that she was headed straight toward the murky water of a moat. Stop it. Why do you want to die? It's crazy. As he caught her around the waist again, she wailed, Why shouldn't I die? You think I'm wicked, so does Musashi. Everybody does. There's nothing I can do but die, embracing Musashi in my heart. Never will I let him be taken from me by a woman like that. You are pretty mixed up. How did you get this way? It doesn't matter. All you have to do is push me into the moat. Go ahead, Jotaro, push. Covering her face with her hands, she burst into frenzied tears. This awakened a strange fear in Jotaro. He too felt the urge to cry. Come on, Akemi, let's go back. Oh, I yearn so to see him. Find him for me, Jotaro. Please, find Musashi for me. Stand still, don't move, it's dangerous. Oh, Musashi, watch out. At that moment, the rodent from the sake shop stepped out of the darkness. Go away, boy, he commanded. I'll take her back to the inn. He put his hands under Jotaro's arm and roughly lifted him aside. He was a tall man, 34 or 5 years old, with deep-set eyes and a heavy beard. A crooked scar, no doubt left by a sword, ran from below his right ear to his chin. It looked like the jagged tear that appears when it looked like the jagged tear that appears when a peach is broken open. Swallowing hard to overcome his fear, Jotaro tried coaxing. Akemi, please come with me. Everything will be all right. Akemi's head was now resting on the samurai's chest. Look, the man said, she's gone to sleep. Off with you. I'll take her home later. No, let go of her. When the boy refused to budge, the ronin slowly reached out with one hand and grabbed his collar. Hands off, screamed Jotaro, resisting with all his strength. You little bastard, how do you like to get thrown into the moat? How would you like to get thrown into the moat? Who's going to do it? He wriggled loose, and as soon as he was free, his hand found the end of his wooden sword. He swung it at the man's side, but his own body did a somersault and landed on a rock by the roadside. He moaned once, then remained still. Jotaro had been out for some time before he began hearing voices around him. Wake up, there! What happened? Opening his eyes, he vaguely took in a small crowd of people. Are you awake? Are you all right? Embarrassed by the attention he was attracting, he picked up his wooden sword and was trying to get away when a clerk from the inn grabbed his arm. Wait a minute, he barked. What happened to the woman you were with? Looking around, Shotaro got the impression that the others were also from the inn, guests as well as employees. Some of the men were carrying sticks, others were holding round paper lanterns. A man came and said you had been attacked and a rodent had carried the woman off. Do you know which way they went? Shotaro, still dazed, shook his head. That's impossible. You must have some idea. Jotaro pointed in the first direction that came to hand. Now I remember it was that way. He was reluctant to say what really happened, fearing a scolding from Daiso for getting involved, but also dreading to admit in front of these people that the Ronin had thrown him. Despite the vagueness of his reply, the crowd rushed off, and presently a cry went up. Here she is, over here. The lanterns gathered in a cycle around Akemi, whose disheveled form lay where she had been abandoned, on a stack of hay in a farmer's shed, prodded back to reality by the clatter of running feet. She dragged herself to her feet. The front of her kimono was open. Her obi lay on the ground. Hay clung to her hair and clothing. What happened? While the word rape was on the tip of everyone's tongue, no one said it, nor did it even cross their minds to chase the villain. Whatever had happened to Akemi, they felt she had brought on herself. Come on, let's go back, said one of the men taking her hand. Akemi pulled away quickly, resting her face forlornly against the wall. She broke down in bitter tears. Seems to be drunk. How did she get that way? Jotaro had been watching the scene from a distance. What had befallen Akemi was not clear to him in detail, but somehow he was reminded of an experience that had nothing to do with her. The titillation of lying in the fodder shed in Koyagi with culture came back to him, along with the strangely exciting fear of approaching footsteps. But his pleasure quickly evaporated. I better get back, he said decisively. As his pace quickened, his spirit, back from its trip to the unknown, moved him to break into song. Old metal Buddha standing in the fee. Have you seen a girl of 16? Don't you know a girl who has strayed? When asked, you say clang. When struck, you say bong. A cricket in the grass. Jotaro jogged along at a good pace, paying little attention to the road. Suddenly he halted and looked around, wondering if he had lost his way. I don't remember passing here before, he thought nervously. Samurai houses fringed the remains of an old fortress. One section of the compound had been rebuilt to serve as the official residence of the recently appointed Okubo Nakayasu, but the rest of the area, rising like a natural mound, was covered with weeds and trees. The stone ramparts were crumbling, having been ravaged many years earlier by an invading army. The fortification looked primitive compared to the castle complexes of the last 40 to 50 years. There was no moat, no bridge, nothing that could properly be described as a castle wall. It had probably belonged to one of the local gentry in the days before the Great Civil War. Daimyo incorporated their rural domains into larger feudal principalities. On one side of the road were paddies and marshland, on the other walls, and beyond a cliff atop which the fortress might once have stood. As he tried to get his bearings, Jotaro's eyes traveled along the cliff. Then he saw something move, stop, and move again. At first, it looked like an animal. But soon the stealthily moving silhouette became the outline of a man. Jotaro shivered but stood riveted to the spot. The man lowered a rope with a hook attached to the top. After he had slid down the full length of the rope and found a foothold, he shook the hook loose and repeated the process. When he reached the bottom, he disappeared into a copse. Jotaro's curiosity was thoroughly aroused. A few minutes later, he saw the man walking along the low rises separating the paddies and apparently heading straight for him. He nearly panicked, but relaxed when he could make out the bundle on the man's back. What a waste of time! Nothing but a farmer stealing kindling. He thought the man must have been crazy to risk scaling the cliff for nothing more than some firewood. He was disappointed too. His mystery had become unbearably humdrum. But then came his second shock. As the men strolled up the road past the tree Jotaro was hiding behind, the boy had to stifle a gasp. He was sure the dark figure was Daiso. It couldn't be, he told himself. The man had a black cloth around his face and wore peasant's knickers, leggings, and light straw sandals. The mysterious figure turned off onto a path skirting a hill. No one with such sturdy shoulders and buoyant stride could be in his 50s, as Daiso was. Having convinced himself that he was mistaken, Jotaro followed. He had to get back to the inn, and the man just might unwittingly help him find his way. When the man came to a road marker, he set down his bundle, which appeared to be very heavy. As he leaned over to read the writing on the stone, something about him again struck Jotaro as familiar. While the man climbed the path up the hill, Jotaro examined the marker, on which were carved the words "Pine Tree on Hat Burying Mound" above. This was where the local inhabitants buried the severed skulls of criminals and defeated warriors. The branches of an immense pine were clearly visible against the night sky. By the time Jotaro reached the top of the rise, the man had seated himself by the roots of the tree and was smoking a pipe. Daiso, no question about it now, a peasant would never carry tobacco with him. Some had been successfully grown domestically, but on such a limited scale that it was still very expensive. Even in the relatively well-off Kansai district, it was considered a luxury. And up in Sendai, when Lord Date smoked, his scribe felt constrained to make an entry in his daily journal. Morning, 3 smokes, afternoon, 4 smokes, bedtime, 1 smoke. Financial considerations aside, most people who had a chance to try tobacco found it made them dizzy or even nauseated. Though appreciated for its flavor, it was generally regarded as a narcotic. Jotaro knew that smokers were few. He also knew that Daiso was one of them, for he had frequently seen him drawing on a handsomely made ceramic pipe. Not that this had ever before struck him as strange. Daiso was wealthy and a man of expensive taste. What's he up to? He thought impatiently. Accustomed now to the danger of the situation, he gradually crept closer. Having finished his pipe, the merchant got to his feet, removed his black kerchief, and tucked it into his waist. Then slowly he walked around the pile. The next thing Jotaro knew, he was holding a shovel in his hands. Where had that come from? Leaning on the shovel, Daiso looked around at the night scenery for a moment, apparently fixing the location in his mind. Seemingly satisfied, Daiso rolled aside a large rock on the north side of the tree and began digging energetically, looking neither right nor left. Jotaro watched the hole grew nearly deep enough for a man to stand in. Finally, Daiso stopped and wiped the sweat from his face with his kerchief. Jotaro remained as still as a rock and totally baffled. This will do, the merchant murmured softly as he finished trampling down the soft dirt at the bottom of the hole. For an instant, Jotaro had a peculiar impulse to call out and warn him not to bury himself, but he held back. Jumping to the surface, Daiso proceeded to drag the heavy bundle from the tree to the edge of the hole and undo the hempen cord around the top. At first, Jotaro thought the sack was made of cloth, but now he could see that it was a heavy leather cloak of the sort generals wore over their armor. Inside was another sack made of tenting or some similar fabric. When this was opened, the top of an incredible stack of gold came into view. Seeming cylindrical ingots made by pouring the molten metal into half sections of bamboo split lengthwise. There was more to come. Loosening his obi, Daiso unburdened himself of several dozen large, newly minted gold pieces, which had been stuffed into his stomach wrapper, the back of his kimono, and other parts of his clothing. Having placed these neatly on top of the ingots, he tied both containers securely and dropped the bundle into the pit, as he might have dumped the carcass of a dog. He then shoveled the dirt back in, stamped on it with his feet, and replaced the rock. He finished off by scattering dry grass and twigs around the rock. Then he set about transforming himself back into the well-known Daiso of Narai, affluent dealer in herbs. The peasant's garb wrapped around the shovel went into a thicket not likely to be explored by passers-by. He donned his traveling cloak and hung his money pouch around his neck in the manner of itinerant priest. As he slipped his feet into his zori, he mumbled with satisfaction, "Quite a nice walk." When Daiso was out of hearing range, Jotaro emerged from his hiding place and went to the rock. Though he scrutinized the spot carefully, he could discern no trace of what he had just witnessed. He stared at the ground as if at a magician's empty palm. "I better get moving," he thought suddenly. "If I'm not there when he gets back to the inn, he will be suspicious." Since the lights of the town were now visible beneath him, he had no trouble setting his course. Running like the wind, he somehow contrived to stay on back roads and keep well out of Daiso's path. It was with an expression of perfect innocence that he climbed the stairs at the inn and entered their room. He was in luck. Sukechi was slumped against the lacquer traveling case, alone and sound asleep. A thin trickle of saliva ran down his chin. "Hey, Sukechi, you'll catch cold there." Purpose, Purposely, Jotaro shook him to wake him up. "Oh, it's you, is it?" drawled Sukechi, rubbing his eye. "What were you doing out this late without telling the master?" "Are you crazy? I've been back for hours. If you've been awake, you would have known that." "Don't try to fool me. I know you went out with that woman from the Sumiya. If you are running around after a whore now, I hate to think what you will be acting like when you grow up." Just then, Daiso opened the shoji. "I'm back," was all he said. An early morning start was necessary in order to make in order to make to Edo before nightfall. Jianai had his troop Akemi restored to it on the road well before sunrise. Daiso, Sugeichi, and Jotaro, however, took their time over breakfast and were not ready to leave until the sun was fairly high in the sky. Daiso led the way as usual, but Jotaro trailed behind with Sugeichi, which was unusual. Finally, Daiso stopped, asking, "What's the matter with you this morning?" Pardon, Jotaro did his best to appear nonchalant. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing at all. Why do you ask?" "You look glum, not like you." "It's nothing, sir. I was just thinking. If I stay with you, I don't know whether I will ever find my teacher or not. I would like to go and look for him on my own, if it's all right with you." Without a moment's hesitation, Daiso replied, "It isn't." Jotaro had sidled up and started to take hold of the man's arm, but now he withdrew his hand and asked nervously, "Why not? Let's rest here a while," said Daiso, lowering himself onto the grassy plain for which the province of Musashi was famous. Once seated, he gestured to Sugeichi to go on ahead. "But I have to find my teacher as soon as possible," pleaded Jotaro. "I told you you are not going off by yourself." Looking very stern, Daiso put his ceramic pipe to his lips and took a puff. "As of today, you are my son." He sounded serious. Jotaro swallowed hard, but then Daiso laughed, and the boy, assuming it was all a joke, said, "I couldn't do that. I don't want to be your son." "What? You are a merchant. I want to be a samurai." "I'm sure you will find that Daiso of Narai is no ordinary townsman without honor or background. Become my adopted son and I'll make a real samurai out of you." Jotaro realized with dismay that he meant what he was saying. "May I ask why you decided this so suddenly?" the boy asked. In a trice, Daiso seized him and pinioned him to his side. Putting his mouth to the boy's ear, he whispered, "You saw me, didn't you, you little bastard?" "Saw you?" "Yes, you were watching, weren't you?" "I don't know what you were talking about. Watching what?" "What I did last night." Jotaro tried his best to stay calm. "Why did you do that?" The boy's defenses were close to collapse. "Why were you prying into my private affairs?" "I'm sorry," blurted Jotaro. "I'm really sorry. I won't tell a soul." "Keep your voice down. I'm not going to punish you, but in return you are going to become my adopted son. If you refuse, you give me no choice but to kill you. Now, don't force me to do that. I think you are a fine boy, very likable." For the first time in his life, Jotaro began to feel real fear. "I'm sorry," he repeated fervently. "Don't kill me. I don't want to die." Like a captured skylark, he wriggled timidly in Daiso's arms, afraid that if he really struggled, the hand of death would descend on him forthwith. Although the boy felt his grip to be vice-like, Daiso was not holding him tightly at all. In fact, when he pulled the boy onto his lap, his touch was almost tender. "Then you will be my son, won't you?" His stubbly chin scratched Jotaro's cheek. Though he couldn't have identified it, what fattered Jotaro was an adult, masculine scent. He was like an infant on Daiso's knee, unable to resist, unable even to speak. "It's for you to decide. Will you let me adopt you, or will you die? Answer me, now." With a wail, the boy burst into tears. He rubbed his face with dirty fingers until muddy little puddles formed on both sides of his nose. "Why cry? You are lucky to have such an opportunity. I guarantee you will be a great samurai when I finish with you." "But what is it? Yes, I can't say it." "Out with it. Speak. A man should state his thoughts simply and clearly." Well, your business is stealing." Had it not been for the hands resting lightly on him, Jotaro would have been off like a gazelle. But Daiso's lap was a deep pit, the walls of which prevented him from moving. Ha ha, chortled Daiso, giving him a playful slap on the back. Is that all that's bothering you? Yeah, yes. The big man's shoulders shook with laughter. I might be the sort of person who would steal the whole country, but a common burglar or highwayman I am not. Look at Ieyasu or Hideyoshi or Nobunaga. They are all warriors who stole or tried to steal the whole nation, aren't they? Just stick with me, and one of these days you will remember. Then you are not a thief. I wouldn't bother with a business that's so unprofitable. Lifting the boy off his knee, he said, now stop blabbering and let's be on our way. From this moment on, you are my son. I'll be a good father to you. Your end of the bargain is that you never breathe a word to anyone about what you think you saw last night. If you do, I'll wring your neck. Jotaro believed him. The pioneers. On the day near the end of the 5th month when Osugi arrived in Edo, the air was steamingly sultry, the way it was only when the raining season failed to bring rain. In the nearly 2 months since she had left Kyoto, she had traveled at a leisurely pace, taking time to pamper her aches and pains or to visit shrines and temples. Her first impression of the shogun's capital was distasteful. Why build houses in a swamp like this? She remarked disdainfully. The weeds and rushes haven't even been cleared away yet. Because of the unseasonable drought, a pall of dust hung over the Takanawa High Road, with its newly planted trees and recently erected milestones. The stretch from Shioiri to Nihonbashi was crowded with ox cart loaded with rocks or lumber. All along the way, new houses were going up at a furious clip. Of all the, gasped Osugi, looking up angrily at a half-finished house. A gob of wet clay from the plaster from a plasterer's trowel had accidentally landed on her kimono. The workmen exploded with laughter. How dare you throw mud on people and then stand there laughing? You should be on your knees apologizing. Back in Miyamoto, a few sharp words from her would have had her tenants or any of the other villagers cowering. These laborers, among the thousands of newcomers from all over the country, barely look up from their work. What's the old hag babbling about? A worker asked. Osugi, incensed, shouted, who said that? Why, you? The more she spattered, the harder they laughed. Spectators began to gather, asking each other why the old woman wasn't acting her age and taking the matter in stride. Storming into the house, Osugi seized the end of the plank the plasterers were standing on and yanked it off its supports. Men and buckets full of wet clay clattered to the floor. You old bitch! Jumping to their feet, they surrounded her threateningly. Osugi did not flinch. Come outside, she commanded grimly as she placed her hand on her short sword. The workmen had second thoughts. The way she looked and carried on, she had to be from a samurai family. They might get into trouble if they weren't careful. Their manner softened noticeably. Observing the change, Otsugi declared grandly, henceforward, I'll not countenance rudeness from the likes of you. With a look of satisfaction on her face, she went out and started up the road again, leaving the spectators to gape at her stubborn, straight back. She was hardly on her way again before an apprentice, his muddy feet grotesquely covered with shavings and sawdust, ran up behind her, carrying a bucket of mucky clay. Shouting, how do you like this, you old witch? He slung the contents of his pail at her back. Ow! The howl did credit to Osugi's lungs, but before she could turn around, the apprentice had vanished. When she realized the extent of the damage, she scowled bitterly and tears of sheer vexation filled her eyes. The merriment was general. What are you nincompoops laughing at? Raged Otsugi, baring her teeth. What's so funny about an old woman being splattered with grime? Is this the way you welcome elderly people to Edo? You are not even human. Just remember, you will all be old one day. This outburst attracted even more onlookers. Edo, indeed, she snorted. To hear people talk, you would think it was the greatest city in the whole country. And what is it? A place full of dirt and filth, where everybody's pulling down hills and filling in swamps and digging ditches and piling up sand from the seaside. Not only that, it's full of riffraff like you never find in Kyoto or anywhere in the West. Having that Having got that off her chest, she turned her back on the sniggering crowd and went rapidly on her way. To be sure, the city's newness was its most remarkable feature. The wood and plaster of the houses was all bright and fresh. Many buildings sides were only partially filled in, and ox and horse dung assailed the eyes and nostrils. Not so long ago, this road had been a mere footpath through the rice paddies between the villages of Hibiya and Chiyoda. Had Osugi gone a little to the west nearer Edo Castle, she would have found an older and more sedate district, where daimyo and vassals of the shogun had begun building residences soon after Tokugawa Ieyasu occupied Edo in 1590. As it was, absolutely nothing appealed to her. She felt ancient. Everyone she saw, shopkeepers, officials on horseback, samurai striding by in basket hats, all were young, as were laborers, craftsmen, vendors, soldiers, even generals. The front of one house, where plasterers were still at work, bore a shop sign, behind which sat a heavily powdered woman, brushing her eyebrows as she awaited customers. In other half-finished buildings, people were selling sake, selling up displays of setting up displays of drying goods, laying in supplies of dried fish. One man was hanging out a sign advertising medicine. If I weren't looking for someone, Osugi mumbled sourly, I wouldn't stay in this garbage dump a single night. Coming to a hill of excavated dirt blocking the road, she halted. At the foot of a bridge crossing the as yet waterless moat stood a shanty. Its walls consisted of reed matting held in place by strips of bamboo, but a banner proclaimed that this was a public bath. Ozuki handed over a copper coin and went in to wash her kimono. After cleaning it as well as she could, she borrowed a drying pole and hung the garment up by the side of the shanty. Clothed in her underwear, with a light bathrobe draped over her back, she squatted in the shadow of the bathhouse and gazed absently at the road. Across the street, half a dozen men stood in a circle, haggling in voices loud enough for Osuki to hear what they were saying. How many square feet is it? I wouldn't mind considering it if the price is right. There's 2/3 of an acre. The price is what I mentioned before. I can't come down from that. It's too much. You must know that yourself. Not at all. It costs a lot of money to fill in land. Fill in land? And don't forget, there's no more available around here. Oh, there must be. They are filling in everywhere. Already so, people are snatching it up as it is. Swamp and all, you won't find 300 square feet for sale. Of course, if you're willing to go way over toward the Sumida River, you might be able to get something cheaper. Do you guarantee there's 2/3 of an acre? You don't have to take my word for it. Get a rope and measure it off yourself. Osugi was astounded. The figure quoted for 100 square feet would have been sufficient for tens of acres of good rice land. But essentially, the same conversation was taking place all over the city, for many a merchant speculated in land. Osugi was also mystified. Why would anybody want land here? It's no good for rice, and you can't call this place a city. By and by, the deal across the street was sealed with a ritual hand clapping intended to bring good luck to all concerned. As she idly watched the departing shadows, Otsugi became conscious of a hand on the back of her obi. Thief, she shrieked as she made a grab for the pickpocket's wrist, but her coin purse had already been removed and the thief was already in the street. Thief, Otsugi screamed again, flying after the man. She managed to throw her arms around his waist. Help! Thief! The pickpocket struggled, striking her several times in the face without being able to break her grip. Let go of me, you cow! He shouted, kicking her in the ribs. With a loud grunt, Otsugi fell down, but she had her short sword out and slashed at the man's ankle. Ow! Blood pouring from the wound, he limped a few steps, then flopped down on the ground. Startled by the commotion, the land dealers turned around, and one of them exclaimed, "Hey, isn't that good for nothing from Koshu?" The speaker was Hangawara Yajibe, master of a large gang of construction workers. Looks like him, agreed one of his henchmen. What's that in his hand? Looks like a purse. It does, doesn't it? And somebody just yelled, thief. Look, there's an old man sprawled out on the ground. Go see what's the matter with her. I'll take care of him. The pickpocket was on his feet and running again. But Yajibe caught up with him and slapped him to the ground as he might have swatted a grasshopper. Returning to his boss, the henchman reported, "Just as we thought, he stole the old lady's purse. I have it here. How is she?" Not hurt bad, she fainted but came to screaming bloody murder. She's still sitting there. Can't she stand up? I guess not. He kicked her in the ribs. You son of a bitch. Still glaring at the pickpocket, Yajibe issued a command to his underling. Ushi, put up a stake. The words set the thief to trembling as though the point of a knife were being pressed against his throat. Not that, he pleaded, groveling in the dirt at Yajibe's feet. Let me off just this once. I promise I won't do it again. Yajibe shook his head. No, you won't get what you deserve. Ushi, who had been named after the zodiac sign under which he was born, a not uncommon practice among farmers, returned with 2 workmen from the nearby bridge side. Over there, he said, pointing toward the middle of a vacant lot. After the workmen had driven a heavy post into the ground, one of them asked, "This good enough?" "That's fine," said Yajibe. "Now tie him to it and nail a board above his head." When this had been done, Yajibe borrowed a carpenter's ink pot and brush and wrote on the board, "This man is a thief. Until recently he worked for me, but he has committed a crime for which he must be punished. He is to be tied here, exposed to rain and sun, for 7 days and 7 nights, by order of Yajibe of Bakurocho." "Thanks," he said, returning the ink pot. "Now, if it's not too much trouble, give him a bite to eat every once in a while, just enough to keep him from starving. Anything left over from your lunch will do." The 2 workmen, along with others who had congregated in the meantime, signified their assent. Some of the laborers promised that they would see to it that the thief got his share of ridicule. It wasn't just samurai who feared public exposure of their misdeeds or weaknesses. Even for ordinary townspeople in these times, to be laughed at was the worst of all punishments. Punishing criminals without reference to law was a firmly established practice. In the days when the warriors were too busy with warfare to maintain order, townsmen had, for the sake of their own safety, taken it upon themselves to deal with miscreants. Though Edo now had an official magistrate and a system was developing whereby leading citizens in each district functioned as government representatives, the summary administration of justice still occurred. With conditions still being a bit chaotic, the authorities saw little reason to interfere. "Ushi," said Yajibe, Take the old lady her purse. Too bad this had happened to somebody her age. She seems to be all alone. What happened to her kimono? She says she washed it and hung it up to dry. Go get it for her, then bring her along. We might as well take her home with us. There's little point in punishing the thief if we're going to leave her here for some other ruffian to prey on. Moments later, Yajibe strode away. Ushi was close behind, the kimono over his arm and Osugi on his back. They soon reached Nihonbashi, the bridge of Japan, from which all distances along the roads leading out of Edo were now measured. Stone parapets supported the wooden arch, and since the bridge had been constructed only about a year before, the railings still preserved a feeling of newness. Boats from Kamakura and Odawara were moored along one riverbank. On the other was the city's fish market. Oh, my side hurts, Osugi said with a loud groan. The fishmongers looked up to see what was going on. Being gaped at was not to Yajibe's liking. Glancing back at Osugi, he said, "We'll be there soon, trying to hold on, your life's not in danger." Osugi laid her head on Ushi's back and became as quiet as a baby. In the downtown area, tradesmen and artisans had formed their own neighborhoods. There was a blacksmith district, one for lens makers, others for dyers, tatami weavers, and so on. Yajibe's house stood out prominently from those of the other carpenters because the front half of the roof was covered with tiles. All the other houses had board roofs. Until a fire a couple of years before, nearly all the roofs had been made of thatch. As it happened, Yajibe had acquired what passed for his surname from his roof, Hangawara, meaning half tile. He had come to Edo as a ronin, but being both clever and warm-hearted, he had proved to be a skilled manager of men. Before long, he set himself up as a contractor, employing a sizable crew of carpenters, roofers, and unskilled workers. From building projects carried out for various daimyo, he acquired enough capital to branch out into the real estate business as well. Too affluent now to have to work with his own hands, he played the role of local boss. Among Edo's numerous self-appointed bosses, Yajibe was one of the best known and most highly respected. The townspeople look up to the bosses as well as to the warriors, but of the two, the bosses were the more highly admired because they usually stood up for the common people. Although those of Edo had a style and spirit of their own, the bosses were not unique to the new capital. Their history went back to the troubled later days of the Ashikaga shogunate, when gangs of thugs roamed the countryside like prides of lions, pillaging at will and submitting to no restraints. According to a writer of that era, they wore little more than vermilion loincloths and white stomach wrappers. Their long swords were very long, nearly 4 feet, and even their short swords were more than 2 feet in length. Many used other weapons of a cruder type, such as battle axes and iron rakes. They let their hair grow wild, using thick strips of rope for headbands, and leather leggings often covered their calves. Having no fixed loyalties, they operated as mercenaries, and after peace was restored, were ostracized by both farmers and samurai alike. By the Edo era, those not content with being bandits or highwaymen often sought fortunes in the new capital. More than a few succeeded, and this breed of leaders was once described as having righteousness for bones, love of the people for flesh, and gallantry for skin. In short, they were popular heroes per excellence. Slaughter by the riverside. Life under Yajibe's half-tile roof agreed so much with Osugi that a year and a half later she was still there. After the first few weeks during which she rested and recovered her health, hardly a day passed without her telling herself she should be on the way. Whenever she broached the subject to Yajibe, whom she didn't see often, he urged her to stay on. "What's the hurry?" he would ask. "There's no reason for you to go anywhere. Bide your time until we find Musashi. Then we can serve as your seconds." Yajibe knew nothing of Osugi's enemy except what she herself had told him, that he was, in so many words, the blackest of blood gods. But since the day of her arrival, all of his men had been under instructions to report immediately anything they heard or saw of Musashi. After initially detesting Ido, Osugi had mellowed in attitude to the point where she was willing to admit that the people were friendly, carefree, and really very kind at heart. The Hangawara household was a particularly easygoing place and something for a haven for social misfits. Country boys too lazy to farm, displaced Ronins, profligates who had run through their parents' money, and tattoo ex-convicts made up a coarse and motley crew, whose unifying aspirate decor curiously resembled that of a well-run school for warriors. The ideal here, however, was blustering masculinity rather than spiritual manliness. It was really a dojo for thugs. As in the martial arts dojo, there was a rigid class structure. Under the boss, who was the ultimate temporal and spiritual authority, came a group of seniors, usually referred to as the elder brothers. Below them were the ordinary henchmen, the Koban, whose ranking was determined largely by length of service. There was also a special class of guests. Their status depended on such factors as their ability with weapons. Bolstering the hierarchical organization was a code of etiquette, of uncertain origin but strictly adhered to. At one point, Yajibe, thinking Osugi might be bored, suggested that she take care of the younger men. Since then, her days had been fully occupied with sewing, mending, washing, and straightening up after the Koban, whose slovenliness gave her plenty of work. For all their lack of breeding, the Koban recognized quality when they saw it. They admired both Osugi's Spartan habits and the efficiency with which she went about her chores. "She's a real samurai lady," they were wont to say. The house of her Indian must have very good blood in it. Osugi's unlikely host treated her with consideration and had even built her separate living quarters on the vacant lot behind his house. And whenever he was at home, he went to pay his respects each morning and evening. When asked by one of his underlings why he displayed such deference toward a stranger, Yajibe confessed that he had acted very badly toward his own father and mother while they were still alive. "At my age," he said, "I feel I have a filial duty to all older people." Spring came and the wild plum blossoms fell, but the city itself had as yet almost no cherry blossoms. Apart from a few trees in the sparsely settled hills to the west, there were only the saplings that Buddhists had planted along the road leading to the Sensoji in Asakusa. Rumor had it that this year they were sprouting buds and would blossom for the first time. One day, Yajibe came to Osugi's room and said, "I'm going to the Sensoji. Do you feel like coming along?" "I would love to. That temple's dedicated to Kanseon, and I'm a great believer in her powers. She's the same bodhisattva as the canon I pray to at Kiyomizudera in Kyoto." With Yajibe and Osugi between two of the Koben, Juro and Koroku. Juro bore the nickname Reed Mat for reasons no one knew, but it was obvious why Koroku was called the Acolyte. He was a small, compact man with a distinctly benign face. If one overlooked the three ugly scars on his forehead, evidence of a proclivity for sweet brawls. They first made street brawls. Oh my gosh, street brawls. They first made their way to the moat at Kyobashi, where boats were available for hire. After Koroku had skillfully sculled them out of the moat and into the Sumida River, Yajibe ordered the box lunches open. I'm going to the temple today, he exclaimed, because it's the anniversary of my mother's death. I really should go back home and visit her grave, but it's too far, so I compromised by going to the Sensoji and making a donation. But that's neither here nor there. Just think of it as a picnic. He reached over the side of the boat, rinsed off a sake cup, and offered it to Osugi. It's very fine of you to remember your mother, she said, as she accepted the cup, all the while wondering, fretfully, if Matahachi would do the same when she was gone. I wonder, though, is drinking sake on the anniversary of your poor mother's passing the thing to do? Well, I'd rather do that than hold some pompous ceremony. Anyway, I believe in the Buddha. That's all that counts for ignorant louts like me. You know the saying, don't you? He who has faith need have no knowledge. Osugi, letting it go at that, proceeded to have several refills. After a time, she remarked, I haven't drunk like this for ages. I feel like I'm floating on air. Drink up, urged Yajibe. It's good sake, isn't it? Don't worry about being out on the water. We are here to take care of you. The river, flowing south from the town of Sumida, was broad and placid. On the Shimosa side, the east bank opposite Edo, stood a luxuriant forest. Tree roots jutting into the water formed nests holding limpid pools, which shone like sapphires in the sunlight. Oh, said Osugi, listen to the nightingales. When the rainy season comes, you can hear cuckoos all day long. Let me pour for you. I hope you don't mind joining in your celebration. I like to see you having a good time. From the stand, Koroku called out lustily, Say, boss, how about passing the sake around? Just pay attention to your walk. If you start now, we'll all drown. On the way back, you can have all you want, if you say so, but I just want you to know the whole river's beginning to look like sake. Stop thinking about it. Here, pull over to that boat next to the bank so we can buy some fresh fish. Koroku did as he was told. After a bit of haggling, the fisherman, flashing a happy smile, lifted the cover of a tank built into the deck and told them to take anything they wanted. Osugi had never seen anything like it. The tank was full to the brim with wriggling, flapping fish, some from the sea, some from the river, carp, prawns, catfish, black porgies, gobies, even trout and sea bass. Yajibe sprinkled soy sauce on some white bait and began eating it raw. He offered some to Osugi, but she declined, with a look of dread on her face. When they drew up on the west side of the river and disembarked, Osugi seemed a little wobbly on her feet. Be careful, warned Yajibe. Here, take my hand. No, thank you. I don't need any help. She waved her own hand before her face indignantly. After Juro and Koroku had moored the boat, the four of them crossed a broad expanse of stones and expanse of stone and paddles to get to the river bank proper. A group of small children were busily turning over stones, but seeing the unusual foursome, they stopped and flocked around, chattering excitedly. Buy some, sir, please. Won't you buy some, Granny? Yajibe seemed to like children. At least he showed no signs of annoyance. What have you got there? Crabs, not crabs, arrowheads, they cried, producing handfuls of them from their kimonos. Arrowheads? That's right, a lot of men and horses are buried in a mound by the temple. People coming here buy arrowheads to offer to the dead. You should too. I don't think I want any arrowheads, but I will give you some money. How would that do? That, it appeared, would do admirably, and as soon as Yajibe had passed out a few coins, the children ran off to resume their digging. But even as he watched, a man emerged from a thatched roof house nearby, took the coins away from them, and went back inside. Yajibe clicked his tongue and turned away in disgust. Osugi was gazing out over the river, fascination in her eyes. If there are a lot of arrowheads lying around, she observed, there must have been a big battle. I don't really know, but it seems there were quite a few battles here in the days when Edo was only a provincial estate. That was 400 or 500 years ago. I've heard that Minamoto no Yoritomo came up here from Izu to organize troops in the 12th century. When the imperial court was divided, when was that? 14th century? Lord Niter of Musashi was defeated by the Ashikagas somewhere in the neighborhood. Just in the last couple of centuries, Otter Dogen and other local generals are said to have fought many battles not far up the river. While they were talking, Juro and Koroku went on ahead to make a place for them to sit on the veranda of the temple. The Sensoji turned out to be a terrible disappointment to Osugi. In her eyes, it was nothing more than a large, run-down house, the priest's residence a mere shack. Is this it? She wanted to know, with more than a hint of deprecation. After all I've heard about the Sensoji. The setting was a splendidly primeval forest of large ancient trees, but not only did the Kanzeon Hall look shabby, when the river flooded, the water came through the woods right up to the veranda. Even at other times, small tributaries washed over the grounds. Welcome, good to see you again. Glancing up in surprise, Osugi saw a priest kneeling on the roof. Walking on the roof, asked Yajibe amiably. Have to, because of the birds. The oftener I mend it, the oftener they steal the thatch to make nests with. There's always a leak somewhere. Make yourself comfortable, I'll be down shortly. Yajibe and Osugi picked up votive candles and went into the dim interior. No wonder it leaks, she thought, looking at the star-like holes above her. Kneeling beside Yajibe, she took out her prayer beads and with a dreamy look in her eye, chanted the vow of Kanzeon from the Lotus Sutra. You will reside in the air like the sun, and if you are pursued by evil men and pushed off the Diamond Mountain, reflect on the power of Kanzeon, and you will not lose a hair from your head. And if bandits surround you and threaten you with swords, and if you reflect on the power of Kanzeon, the bandits will take pity on you. And if the king sentences you to death and the sword is about to behead you, reflect on the power of Kanzeon, the sword will break into pieces. She recited softly at first, but as she became oblivious to the presence of Yajibe, Juro, and Kuroku, her voice rose and grew resonant. A rapt expression came to her face. The 84,000 sentient beings began to aspire in their hearts for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the unsurpassed wisdom of the Buddhas. Prayer beads trembling in her fingers, Osugi went without a break from the recitation into a personal supplication of her own. Hail to Kanzeon, war-honored one. Hail to the Bodhisattva of infinite mercy and infinite compassion. Look favorably on this old woman's one wish. Let me strike Musashi down, and very soon. Let me strike him down. Let me strike him down. Abruptly lowering her voice, she bowed to the floor and made Matahachi a goodbye, caused the house of Hoenton to prosper. After the long prayer ended, there was a moment's silence before the priest invited them outside to have some tea. Yajibe and the two younger men, who had knelt in proper fashion throughout the invocation, got up, rubbing their tingly legs, and went out on the veranda. I can have some sake now, can't I? Juro asked eagerly. Permission